What's up, guys? We are back with Cameron. It's sticking. The nickname is sticking. And Polly Rocket here to answer your questions on the Natty or Not episode, part 3, the one that you guys have actually been waiting for, the one where you are going to answer, or where we are going to answer your questions. So I think we have somewhere around 8-10 questions here to get through. Any opening comments from the two gentlemen across from me, the two handsome gentlemen across from me?
Nervous as shit again.
Uh-oh, Cam's nervous. Cam's nervous, and Paul is sweaty because he's nervous?
No, dude, that's just normal, like, bodybuilder shit, dude. Just thick and moist for no reason.
Just a big thermic boy.
Yeah.
All righty. Let's get into it. All right, so our first question, and it is a fun one, from Sean Wandering is, can you go pro naturally? So let's cover the first part of this question. Yes, you can go pro in a natural federation naturally, and you should. And if you don't, you're a piece of shit. But let's talk about now in these untested federations, can you go pro naturally? Cam, do you have any experience with this, maybe? Maybe an IFBB pro that is natural?
Yeah, Echo Johnson, who won her class at North Americans, probably one of the freakiest athletes I will probably ever coach, or will probably be in the top 3 of all time. Yeah, I know she, I think she was 30, she's 34 now, but she's just a freak human. I know she almost went to the Olympics for track and field. I remember the first training phase I gave her, I put like assisted pull-ups and she asked if she could do weighted. And I was like, sure, yeah, go ahead. Go look at her training phase. And she's doing sets of 12 with like a 45-pound plate attached to her. And I'm just like, Jesus. But yeah, no, she was a whole nother animal. So definitely can go pro naturally. I think, especially once you move past bikini, you either got to be a freak and just have it, or the likelihood of going pro is just going to keep going down and down and down. But I think if you're going pro naturally, especially in, the NPC, IFBB side of things, you're going to see it happen most likely, approaching those early 30s or, into the masters categories and everything like that, because going pro naturally, especially for a male in the early 20s, it's just not. I mean, it's like running track, and you're running in flip flops, and everybody else is wearing spikes. It's just kind of like, are you fast as shit in flip flops, or are you about to just get smoked?
Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, man. So I think. Really don't like these questions. I feel like people ask them, well, first, I think Cam just gave an example of somebody who, went pro as a natural. But most people who ask these questions are doing it from the perspective of, like, they want hope. They're like, oh, can I accomplish these great things without compounds? And a lot of these people that ask these questions, they're either, early in to where they really don't know their genetic potential, or maybe they're a few years in, and, like, if people aren't coming up to you and telling you that you're freaky, and you can look at yourself objectively, and if you're just not a freak after like 3 to 5 years of training or something like that, like, probably not, So I mean, but yeah, I mean, especially on the female side, if somebody's got crazy genetics or it's a smaller class, probably. And then when it comes to the men's, maybe men's physique, maybe even potentially classic physique. And then obviously there are guys who go pro in bodybuilding, but they're usually like, what is it, like welterweight or something, like all those classes that are like 150, 160 pounds or less, So yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of hope for many people going pro naturally.
I think if you do want to go pro naturally, there's a couple things that kind of have to go your way. You have to be doing this for a very long time. So I'm talking about like 10, 15 plus years of bodybuilding experience. So someone like Jeff Alberts, if you're a master's, you definitely have a better chance of going pro naturally. And if you're in one of the lighter weight classes, you definitely have a better chance of going pro naturally. So if you take some of the guys from like WNBF Worlds, like the guys that are getting first, second, third, and you put them at NPC Nationals, and maybe you put them in middleweight or you put them in welterweight, they might have a good chance of getting a pro card. Or even if you transfer them over to like classic physique, so some of like the freakier African American guys that you see at the WNBF Worlds, put them in classic trunks and push them over to the NPC, and you might really have a good chance at a pro card there. I forget what his name is. You guys might know. I think his Instagram name is like Iron Lord or something. He competes naturally.
Yeah.
Like that dude could most certainly go over to the NPC and win a pro card if he tried enough. I think he did compete at NPC Nationals and he placed like third or fourth, something like that. But if you give that guy the right lineup, he's going to go pro. So be a genetic freak, be in one of the lower weight classes, probably masters. Cam made a good point. Definitely have to, like, bikini is a good division, and yeah, you just really got to be a freak. Got to have a really good shape.
I think a lot of people. Oh, go ahead.
No, so just to circle back to the question and answer it, can you go pro naturally? I mean, obviously, yes, of course you can, but the likelihood is diminished. The flip flop example is a great example.
Yeah,
sure you could win.
I think what a lot of people sometimes forget too, obviously if we've had figure girls, that have gone pro naturally, then that opportunity is there as a bikini girl. But like what a lot of people forget sometimes is not all about the size. Like some of these compounds, certain ones can really influence the way you look and your hardness and your density. And so you find even at these smaller classes, even though people aren't may not be using lots of drugs and compounds all throughout the year, that sometimes sort of dialing into that show date, they will introduce them to get that, that altered appearance.
And another thing too, it kind of ties back to, I guess it was the part one or part two. I'm not for sure which one, when we were kind of, deciding what the true definition of, being natural or drug free, I think it was what we were calling it. These compounds too, I guess if you're following, like Natural Federation and the rules and everything, if you're staying true to those, you're also going to have, compounds that you can't use that might not necessarily be an anabolic or an androgenic drug, but there's other things that will help with dropping body fat and everything like that. I mean, obviously you can get peeled just straight naturally, but if you have some help there, it's going to make things a little bit advantageous for those that are enhanced.
Yeah, most definitely. What do you think? That question pretty good? Yeah, let's move it along. All right, next one will be a quick one. I can just zip through this one. So at this part, we'll probably have Lenny throw up a picture. We'll throw up that picture that I posted on my Instagram of the natural or the drug-free versus the enhanced side by side. So Andrew Cow asks, I might be butchering your name, sorry if I am. What was your body fat in each? So I tried to be as close as possible, but I didn't have the same person skin fold me both times. In 2016, I had a friend of mine, Carly Boone, Dr. Carly Boone, skin fold me in the UCF lab, 7-site skin fold. And then this time around, I had my fiance, Jimble, same skin fold sites. She's done hundreds of skin folds on me, so I definitely trust her measurement there. But there will be some difference. In 2016, I was skin folded at 4.8% body fat. It's skin folds, so take that for what it's worth. Was I truly 4.8%? Probably not. Who knows where I actually was. And then this time around, I was 7-site skin folded at 5.2%. So I was about half a percentage point fatter this time around. See that there were areas that were still holding on. The glutes were definitely not as sharp. Like you could still see some lower lats where there still had some fat to go there as well. So looking back on it, I kind of wish this last prep, that I maybe fucking series Sorry. This year, I kind of wish that I had maybe like 1 to 2 extra weeks of dieting. I think I could have pulled off a little bit more body fat. But yeah, so it was about 4.8 versus 5.1.
And then this is just a question I'm going to throw at you because I'm sure somebody out there is probably interested. So, given that your body fat levels were relatively similar, in terms of just how hard and dry you were, what was the difference between being enhanced versus taking this natural route?
I think that in the enhanced situation with the orals that I was using, the 100 milligrams of Winstrol a day, the Trenbolone, the Masteron that I was on, I was definitely able to maintain a harder look, and I didn't have to worry so much about the peaking. Like, I was able to kind of just keep all my electrolytes the same. Water I was able to keep higher. I had a larger margin of error because I was just holding a harder look from the drugs that I was actually taking. Whereas in the natural example, or in the drug-free, sorry, I got drug-free prep, Cam and I, we kind of talked about this in peak week. I kind of threw what I thought would work, a front load in there, and it was just like went to hell, and I didn't know what to expect. So I definitely think 2016 it was a lot easier to nail a harder look because of the compounds that I was using, whereas this year I had to finesse it a bit more. Paul, anything?
No, man.
All right, our next question comes from Omar Rivera. I think this is one that we're going to dig into and really enjoy answering this one. And Omar asks, when enhanced, do you have to drop calories through prep, or can you add in drugs to offset metabolic adaptations? Are you able to add in calories / grow into a show when enhanced? So there's a lot of pieces to this question. So the first piece of the question that I know that you guys can crush is, when enhanced, do you have to drop calories through prep? Go.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of this misconception, there's so many different coaches doing different things, like there's some coaches that will just straight up like crash diet you from the beginning, or start, as things get rougher, start incorporating like thyroid hormones, Clen, who knows, potentially DNP or something like that, and sort of keep moving things along that way. Or just the diet is just so rough from the beginning anyway, they're just gonna lose fat for you know what I mean? But I mean, there are certain aspects, in terms of, if somebody's weight increases at the beginning of prep, or certain compounds are added and weight increases, if muscle retention is going to be a little better, then someone's going to be able to most likely diet on more calories, and any activity they do is going to expend a little more, just going to have a higher caloric expenditure. So there are a lot of factors there, but at the end of the day, it all sort of works the same. Like if you have somewhat of an intelligent approach and you're not just crash dieting from the beginning, or not, adding absurd doses of drugs and stuff throughout, like that caloric intake is going to have to come down over the prep for most people.
And one thing that I noticed a little bit more this year, and I think especially after another year of working with athletes, getting them on stage and everything, I'll be able to more so compare it and confirm it. But I feel like the higher those the weekly total milligram dosage gets, it raises the potential risk for the stress that's on the body and increases the chance of plateauing throughout your dieting. So I've noticed too, I need to potentially refeed or just relieve that stress, the dieting stress, or the stress from the cardio, deeper into that prep when drugs are at probably the highest they're going to be, versus someone that's natural. It's more straight across the board.
Yeah, I think a lot of where this misconception comes from is it's a marketing tactic used by coaches. So coaches use this on Instagram and they say, listen, come and work with me and we won't even lower your calories throughout prep. Look at this individual I have right here. We actually increased their calories all the way through prep. And it's just like, It's just bold-faced lies or just like manipulations of numbers to make things look like they actually increased calories when they didn't. Or these coaches that talk about multiple 1,000-gram carb refeeds per week for this individual, and look how shredded they got. And one, it's either a lie, or two, the amount of drugs needed to offset increasing someone's calories by over 4,000 multiple times per week is so outlandish that it's just putting the individual at a high degree of risk. Do you get that? Putting the individual at a high degree of risk from those extra drugs. What do you guys think about that? Because have you seen some coaches talking about that?
Yeah, 100%. And
Sure.
given you're not sitting there blasting somebody with thyroid medication and DNP and stuff, it's 2 times harder to diet somebody that's enhanced versus natural. Like natural contest preps are a breeze. They're so much easier than an enhanced athlete, and that's outside of just because of the fact that you have to worry and handle more variables. Just the rate that things move. Yeah, naturals are way easier to diet.
For sure, for sure.
All right, so that's kind of one of those myths that exists with enhanced athletes, that enhanced athletes actually increase their calories through prep, and the drugs are just so strong that they actually offset all of that. So outside of your really dangerous stuff like DNP, or really, really high dosages of thyroid that can have potential permanent side effects, you are going to have to drop calories throughout prep. And you're going to have to drop them pretty low, right? Paul, you've seen clients get really low.
Yeah. Sometimes it's scary because I think like you always hear about the crazy success stories before you get into coaching. And then you think once you start coaching, you think there's something wrong with like taking people below a certain amount of calories. But at the end of the day, it's just like for some people, it's what has to be done. I will say I have seen one circumstance, and obviously I wasn't the coach in charge. This was just an athlete that actually is under both me and Cam, who told us that he had a pretty high caloric intake in his prep. But how that was really offset was the coach had him do a lot of cardio. So,
yeah,
that's like one of the only times I've ever really seen like something believable,
I would have been pissed if you ever do that to me. I'll be so mad. The dude was doing it was like 45 or minutes of cardio twice a day, which, I mean, sometimes people just have to get there. But he was eating 3,100 calories a day.
Yeah. Bring the calories down just a little bit and let me do less cardio.
You score by having to buy more food.
And it was like a big guy too, so like the caloric expenditure on the cardio was really up there. Like, it wasn't just like 2 hours a day of like easy cardio.
Yeah. So the second part of this question is actually, can you add in drugs to offset metabolic adaptations? Can you do that?
Outside of
for sure. I mean, for every, I don't know, measurement, whether it's micrograms or milligrams of, Clen, T3, or, potentially DNP, you get sort of like, say, a percentage increase in metabolic rate, But I think if you're using those drugs, in my opinion, a little more responsibly, that offsets some of the adaptation, but it doesn't remove the need to reduce food.
And the only other way too that you could, say that you for sure can use drugs to add calories and grow into a show, is if you just added in the drugs, sped things up, and reverse dieted 4 weeks into it.
And one other thing, because when you do add in those drugs, are you actually offsetting or getting rid of metabolic adaptations? You're not. Those metabolic adaptations are still occurring, right?
I guess in that sense. I guess I just mean from a numbers perspective. Like, don't quote me on this, but I think ephedrine, I want to say 5% increase in I guess like metabolic output. So that would account for like maybe some reduction in wherever that adaptation is coming from to reduce metabolic output, I guess.
And there is a bit of Yeah, there is a bit of negative feedback from supplementing with thyroid medication, right?
For sure. I think overall, when you look at the literature, it seems like people tend to rebound pretty quickly when they come off thyroid medication because obviously if you're taking these, doses like 25, 50, 75, 100 micrograms, your thyroid production is going to decrease or shut down. And then so that takes time once you come off to sort of restart. But yeah, was that your question?
Yeah, I think the
But
overall point that I was getting at.
it's always a risk that potentially that rebound, just doesn't happen as fast as you'd like it to, and I guess there's always a risk that it may never recover. So
All right, so we have dealt with the tap dancing dogs. They are fed. We are good to go now. We were talking about the consequences of thyroid, and the point that I was making was that when you are taking thyroid, though you are kind of like accounting for some of the metabolic slowdown that's happening in the moment, what you might be doing is setting yourself up for an even larger rebound in the end. And Paul, you wanted to comment?
well, I think that was something Cam experienced because Cam came to me through another coach partway through prep and was already on T3. And so since he wanted to finish out that prep, and we didn't want to deal with the rebound afterward, um, we didn't want to have to deal with like a mid prep rebound, or make our job any harder. We sort of let that ride. And for Cam, it took a little bit for his T3 production to sort of get back to normal. And there are a lot of factors there in terms of him exiting his first diet, not really knowing how to handle it well, wanting to be a little more strict and just not being able to. But yeah, there was quite a bit of weight rebound after that. That took a little bit to get under control. So did you want to talk about that at all, Cam?
Yeah, I mean, other than the fact of I was an asshole with my diet, but
Yeah,
I think I put on like 30 to 40 pounds within, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And I remember even after weight was put on, so it wasn't even due to the fact that I was just lean anymore. I remember being cold all the time. Paul kept the house or the apartment on like 64 degrees, and I'll forever hate him for that. But yeah, I remember it being
don't hate me and hate the meat.
mid-August and down here in Georgia in like the 80s and just wearing hoodies and sweats all the time. I remember as we slowly started tapering down the doses, starting to get more tired. And
That's another thing. Having a shutdown thyroid, it really does not feel good at all in terms of like your mood and your energy. And, that was a good point you brought up in what I was talking about with the other factors as to why you gain so much weight. Yeah, if you're really strict with your diet and you're careful, and then, I believe increasing carbohydrates as a priority tends to help the thyroid rebound a little better. Things you can keep things from getting out of hand, but like most people are going to go a little nuts post show, so it's probably going to make like the repercussions of that a little bit worse, measurably worse.
And I think if T3 is, the thyroid medication of choice that you decide to go with throughout a contest prep, if you're being smart about it, you're not going to have it in 16 weeks in the prep anyways. But, if you just have it 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere around there at the end of it, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea to keep your dose where it is, maybe 1, potentially even 2 weeks post show, just because you're going to be going out to eat with people. It's like, if you haven't been on it for a super long time, might as well keep it in for 1 more week or maybe 2. Get all that out of your system. You're going to put on fat anyways. It's just kind of going to be some form of damage control. And then, once you get all that immediate cravings out of the way, as possible, then start tapering it down from there.
Yeah, you definitely have more experience with it. I never ended up taking T3. I met a guy at the gym when I was 19, and he We got to talking about bodybuilding and whatnot. He told me at the time that he was taking this crazy thyroid drug called T3 that just revved your metabolism. He's like, yeah. He's like, I take this stuff and I'll lose like 70, 80 pounds in 12 weeks going into a show. And then I just gain like 90 to 100 in the 12 weeks after the show. And I'm like, that drug I don't ever want to fucking touch. It sounds horrible. Sounds absolutely terrible. And the guy smelled really bad. So I was like, maybe thyroid hormone makes you smell bad. So I never, hopefully that guy's not watching this. How would he? But yeah, so I never messed with thyroid. I never messed with DMP. Stay away from those.
Too, like thyroid medications and T3 at higher doses, you risk kind of messing with your look too in a negative way, you know? So
yeah, I think that those drugs are really going to be. Let me throw out a statement here and see if you guys agree with this. The more lipolytic a fat loss compound, the more catabolic it is. So the harder it drives fat loss, the harder it drives muscle loss.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when you first start with getting into your fat burning compounds, you're like your ECA stack. It's not going to add a lot of fat loss, so therefore it's not going to cause a lot of muscle loss. Whereas when you work your way up to like super high dosages of T3, yes, you're going to get a lot more fat loss, but it sounds like what you're saying is you're also going to get a lot more muscle loss, or it may affect your look in a negative way.
Yeah, essentially. And then I think one possible I guess sort of exception, not that it's going to make you grow gobs of muscle or, you know, prevent gobs of muscle loss if you're doing a very extreme diet, but, you know, Clen may have some anabolic potential, you know, especially in the lower dose ranges.
And with females.
Yeah, I have seen that. I've seen that data. I don't know. Is there human data there? I've seen data in like livestock where they feed a bunch of Clen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it in rat and pig models.
And that's why I say, you know, potential, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then the last part of this question was, are you able to add in calories / grow into a show when enhanced? And my personal opinion on that question is that that's not an enhanced versus a natural thing. I think that whether you're enhanced or whether you're natural, you have the ability to add in calories at the end of a prep if you are ready early. If you're ready early, whether you're natural, whether you're enhanced, it doesn't matter. You have the ability to reverse at the end and potentially fill out and gain some lost tissue. What do you guys think?
When it comes to feeding natural athletes versus enhanced, I feel like what I've noticed is just that the enhanced athletes are way more sensitive to food, and you actually can't feed them as much as a natural athlete. But yeah.
No, yeah, I think any growing, you know, I think we've talked about this last time, how it's just so nuanced. It depends like what you're using, what your experience is using. But in terms of just adding food in a prep and trying to grow into your calories are most likely just going to have to continue to go down into your show unless, like you said, you're ready early and you can add food into the show, you know, to drop off some of that fatigue, stress, and hopefully fill out, improve your look.
Yeah, but what and I'm glad you said it that way, because I think I need to kind of go back to what I said. Growing into a show, growing implies that you're in a calorie surplus. Over the course of a diet into a show, let's say you're 4 weeks out, you're not going to be in a calorie surplus. So you're not going to be growing into the show, but what you are going to be doing is improving your look by filling out, lowering stress, dropping some of that water retention. That may make you look bigger, but you actually haven't grown any new muscle tissue.
Plus, it's like, you know, how ready are you going to be? Like, you're in a reverse diet at 8 weeks out. How much are you even going to really grow in 8 weeks? Like, and that's a really long reverse diet into a show. Like, you reverse diet 4 weeks, you think you're going to grow into it because an increase in food? No.
And even so, like, you know, actualizing, like getting actual contractile tissue, right? Like for it to be noticeable, like how long does it take? We're talking about like these microscopic changes in muscle. So even if you could add food 8 weeks out into a show, like how much actual more muscle tissue that you can visually notice are you going to step on with, you know?
And manipulating dosages wouldn't affect that either. So let's say you're running a gram of test at 8 weeks out, and then you double it to 2 grams of test at 4 weeks out. That's not going to create some situation where all of a sudden now you're growing all this muscle into the show. So I think growing into the show is a bit of a myth.
Yeah, because I think like even in that example, sure, you're increasing your anabolic potential by increasing the dose, but like the actual act of growing requires more than that. You know, it requires food, substrate, you know, so.
Yeah, you simply don't have the building blocks. All right, let's move it right along. That's a good question. Thank you, Omar, for that one. The next question is from Big Silas Stevens. So Silas asks, how did you feel, perform, and respond hormonally during each prep? So I felt equally bad on both of them. Anyone who's been contest lean before, you feel bad, whether you're on a bunch of drugs, on a moderate amount of drugs, or you're completely natural. 5% body fat feels like 5% body fat, and it's not a fun place to be. Perform is a little bit different. So I definitely performed a lot better when I was enhanced than when I was natural. I mean, there are videos of me hitting huge PRs at like 7-8 days out from getting on stage. What's that classic video of Ronnie Coleman deadlifting 800 pounds for a double like 6 weeks out from the Olympia? So like your performance in the gym is going to be greatly improved. And then hormonally responding, Cam and I were talking about this before we got on air, but I actually got blood work on my way into, I think I was like about 8 weeks out from the Florida State, and my total testosterone at that point was somewhere around 7,700 nanograms per deciliter.
Well, tell them, just for those that may not know, what you can expect, like if someone's functioning normally at a natural level, never used anything that would suppress their testosterone. What's an average, measurement for, I don't know, 25-year-old male?
Yeah, what's average, Paul? Probably somewhere between 500 to 1,000.
The range usually, depending on the test, is either like 250 to 1,100 or 300 and something to about 8 something. But like, I'd say like where you most often typically find people is sort of that like middle range, like 500, 600 or so. Every now and again, you meet a freak that has like an 1,100 testosterone naturally. So.
Yeah, so to provide a little bit more context, I got some blood work before I ever took any anabolics ever, and my testosterone was around 600. So pretty normal, middle of the range. I wasn't a freak on the upper end. I was not on the lower end. So enhanced, I got up over 7,000. I kind of wish it had gotten over 9,000 so that we could make some like Dragon Ball Z memes about it. But I was up over 7,000. And then starting the most recent prep in 2019, my total testosterone was around 320. So I wasn't quite in the range of being hypo when I started, but I was definitely on the lower end for a 28-year-old male. So there was still some suppression going on there where I was lower than normal. I would suspect, I didn't get any more blood work throughout the prep, but I would suspect, and you can see if you guys agree with this, that it probably got into some very, very hypo levels by the end of the prep as body fat got down. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical. And we have like case studies and natural bodybuilders that have shown that hypogonadal levels at the end of prep.
Did you ever notice any mental impact from the drop in hormone levels?
Yeah, so on the natural side of things, I got all the negative side effects of the drop in hormones, the decrease in sex drive, just all the negative stuff that you expect. I had some of the symptoms that you were talking about in terms of being like hypothyroid as well, like being cold all the time, being tired all the time, that kind of just general lethargy that comes with being lean. And then on the enhanced side, obviously all the testosterone mediated side effects were a non-issue because I was being propped up by supplemental forms of testosterone. I wasn't having the decrease of sex drive. I was carving a hole in the wall and sticking my dick in it because that's just how high my testosterone was at the time. So yeah, none of those negative side effects on the enhanced side, which is nice. It's
Oh, we lost Ryan.
because side effects. Am I in and out for you guys?
Occasionally.
My kind of robot voicey. All right, you guys are kind of robot voicey as well, but we'll make this thing work. Bear with us here. All right, hormonally. So that's like the hormonal side of things. I had the typical.
Cried a whole lot more. Past prep.
Yeah, I got really emotional. You know, just sitting in my car after my cardio, just having a good cry, putting the Brian McKnight on at maximum volume, parking in the back of the gym parking lot so no one would see me. The usual stuff. However, I do remember sometimes during the enhanced preps when I would finish cardio and I would just go sit in the locker room and like genuinely want to cry because I was just so tired and beat up. I remember thinking to myself, like, I think my body is just running on Trenbolone and Winstrol right now. Like, that's the only substrate that my body is using for energy. So those are the thoughts of a prepping bodybuilder. All right. A question from our own. Would you guys have anything else to say on that question? Should we move along? Move it along. Our own, Mike Taylor. So Mike asked a really good question on the psychological side of things. He said, was it challenging adapting mentally to the natural side of things? Is it hard to look back and compare yourself to the past? So this is one of the questions that I probably get the most often. Do you look at old pictures of yourself and like feel bad or like, oh man, you used to be so big? Like, and genuinely, I mean this. This is not a facade. I could not give less of a shit. I couldn't. I genuinely couldn't. Because I look back on what I used to look like, and I'm like, damn, that was really cool. That was awesome. I was a freak. It felt awesome. Like the looks I got in the gym were cool and all, but it was no different this time around. If you get shredded, people respect you. If you've been shredded, whether it's naturally, enhanced, it doesn't matter, and you can hoist up some heavy weights, you're gonna get that same level of respect from people. So that didn't really like fall off. And I look at my stage shots from this year, and yeah, I'm smaller. Yeah, I'm not as lean. Sure, I wasn't doing the crazy shit in the gym leading up to the show, but like, I still had a lot of fun, and I'm still super proud of what I accomplished. So I think a lot of people expected, and even I kind of expected at the beginning of prep to be mentally let down with what I looked like at the end, and that really wasn't there. I don't know.
Well, like day-to-day life, you know, like putting on like an old 2XL and being like, man, this is all me right now, and like, how was that?
Dude, that first day at Target when it's like, I'm gonna try on this double XL. All right, that's a dress. All right, I'm still an XL. Your boy's still an XL. Throw on the XL, you're like, oh man, it's a little big too. It's a little loose on the arms. You throw on the large for the first time and it fits. Whew, that's a rough moment. No, I still rock the XLs. Still rocking the XL. I just have to buy a different size when I go shopping for stuff. My waist is smaller. That's cool.
That was pretty neat though to hear your side with that, because I never asked or heard you talk about it at all. But yeah, I think it was a pretty solid mindset. I always tell some of my younger athletes, like Jake Cashin, natural, first time ever competing. We knew that our weakness was going to be size, and I just told him, I was like, look, man, we know going into this thing, the size is going to be our weak point, but we have short-term control over your posing and conditioning. I was like, you get peeled, I guarantee you people will respect you. And even at my show, I think
very familiar story.
Yeah, my weight cutoff was like 212, and I stepped on stage at 164. And I remember being backstage and having a group of dudes call me over and be like, yo, show them your legs. And I was like, all right. I thought it was cool. I didn't care.
And that was pretty much exactly our sort of strategy. It was like, dude, you're going to be like the smallest guy on stage. Like, hate to tell you, but we're going to make sure you're the leanest.
Yeah, man, I have to say it felt good when we were lining up. We were getting called out for novice classic physique, the top 5, and the other 4 guys were talking about like the cycles that they were running and whatnot. It felt good to stand there and just be like, hell yeah, I'm about to beat all of you, and your boy is the most hypogonadal dude in the building right now.
The elite, I'm better than you.
And I think that's and this is something that I encourage a lot of people to do in terms of just like switching up what you do. I think the 2 years that I spent doing Olympic weightlifting before coming back to bodybuilding kind of really recharged my batteries, really kind of reset my mentality towards the sport, and kind of like just brought that passion back to it. Because like when I stopped, I was super burnt out. Like just I didn't want anything to do with bodybuilding at the time. And then I took that nice 2 year break, and when I came back to it, it was like, oh man, like my back is growing back. Like I'm getting it back again. My lats are coming back. Like my chest is coming back. I'm actually getting some arms again. So it did feel good to kind of get that rebound and muscle gain coming from, because it had been like, I mean, it had been 2 years since I had done a bench press. I remember hopping on the incline and I was like, all right, 3 hour IR day, got 11 on my first set. I'll probably get like 9 or 10. And I had such bad like volume endurance or volume tolerance that I think I got like 4 and then 1 on my last set. I went 11, 4, 1. And that 1 was like, it was a struggle.
Oh yeah.
So
I for sure would have called you out. Been like, yo, you have no clue.
so just getting all that back was nice. It kind of distracted me from it. But yeah, I'm sure.
About burnout.
Yeah,
I just thought. But anyways, go on.
yeah, throw it in. But yeah, I think a lot of people like. I think a lot of people would struggle with it. There are a lot of people on the enhanced side that really would struggle with it. And what I can tell, if you're someone who is enhanced and you're thinking about dropping it, you're thinking about just going back to being natural, I would really encourage you to do it. Just let it go. Have some reasonable expectations with yourself. Look at these 2 drug addicts on here.
Are you insane?
Have some reasonable expectations for yourself coming back, and just do it if you're truly burnt out.
I'm borderline suicidal when I drop like a shirt size or 2 when I diet, dude.
We just lost 50% of our subscribers.
So yeah, so if we're taking a poll of who has muscle dysmorphia in this chat right now, it's 2 out of 3.
Can't even deny.
All right, but good question, Mike. That was Jerry V. Jerry V asks, why do you think there was so much size lost in your quads when competing naturally? So I can answer this question really easily, and it was just 100% programming error on my part. It was just me fucking up straight up. So throughout this entire prep, what I didn't post a lot of was I was also doing Olympic weightlifting once a week. So every Saturday I was doing clean and jerks and snatches. And I was thinking my thought process at the time was this will be enough stimulus to count as my second leg day. I was only doing one other leg day aside from that. And I said, this will be enough stimulus to count as a second leg day. It most certainly was not. So where I went wrong there was that my frequency of training my quads, my legs as a whole was just too low throughout prep, which accounted for a lot of loss in size. But on the counter to that, a lot of that training volume that I would have normally thrown at legs was thrown at my upper body. So if you look at the pictures and you look at like delts and chest, a lot of those muscle groups are pretty comparable from the enhanced to the natural. So I think I was still able to maintain some of the upper body size. I just definitely sacrificed some in the legs.
Cool. Yeah, so I don't doubt that, there was some leg muscle lost from programming and stuff, but I think, before you told me that, I think when you think about like structurally and then also, well, structurally how you're built, but also how people tend to look when they do gain size, I think the legs tend to be a lot more noticeable with size changes versus like, muscles along your trunk where like it's not like your sort of bone structure is getting smaller, like it's your width isn't going to change a ton. And then there's so many muscles on the leg as well to grow in like every dimension, so like for instance, like if you have somebody who has a double bi progress picture and you have one picture, it's like a year ago and this new picture where they gain an inch on their arms, you could almost look at those photos and be like, his arms don't look that much bigger, but they are a lot bigger, So I think the legs, it's just a more noticeable standout part where you see changes in size, whether it's an increase or decrease a little more easily.
Yeah, let me run this one by you because this is another thought that I had on this one. So another thought that I had on this one was when I was enhanced, there was one body part that I trained the absolute hardest that I trained, and it was legs. I used to train my quads and my hamstrings with heavy squats, high volume, very high volume, heavy RDLs, deadlifts, all of that. So one thing that I thought that it could have been was that because PEDs allow you to push past your genetic potential or past that genetic ceiling, maybe it was the training plus the PEDs that drove my legs so much past their genetic potential that when I removed the PEDs, that they just returned back to their actual genetic potential. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I guess so. What you're saying is like, yeah, I mean, your legs were just so far ahead of everything else, when you're enhanced, that obviously you couldn't maintain that, so they showed the largest decrease as well.
Yeah,
I
because
think
I had
that,
always pushed my leg training that much further.
yeah, I think in a theoretical sense that could be possible. I think it's plausible.
Yeah. Who knows? My legs got small as shit. But it's okay because your boy squatted 160 kilos for 10.
Dude, yeah, what Paul said, especially when you see people coming out of diet, um, legs are one of the first things to bounce back and just get super full. And they're also one of the ones I've noticed take the biggest hit, whether you're enhanced, natural. I mean, you're on your feet all day long. You're doing all your cardio for the most part, unless you're doing some weird row or some shit. Like you're doing it all through your legs, which are gonna dig into your recovery.
Also, like in terms of like off-season legs versus conditioned legs, like your legs can look deceivingly large with a little bit of body fat on them. You know,
Yeah.
so I think that I mean, just when you talk about like legs taking a hit on prep and like seeming like they shrink, once again, it's just once you lose some of that girth from the fat, they appear like they're a lot smaller than they were.
Yeah. One final difference could have just been the fullness in the legs as well, in terms of like the peaking strategies. So the enhanced photo was like in the middle of rapid backloading on 1,000 grams of carbs, whereas with the 2019 picture, I basically had to diet into the show. So maybe it was a difference of like fullness or a small difference in fullness between the photos. Not saying that accounts for all the difference. Carbs wouldn't have saved me. What were you gonna say, Cam?
I was just agreeing with you.
Uh, Smart move. Smart move. I used to tell my students that's the best way to be right. Just agree with me. All right, Jerry. I hope we answer your question. All right, this next question. Listen, all of you nice individuals who ask questions on Q&As, please learn how to ask a question. Here's a perfect example of someone who doesn't know how to ask a question. He will remain nameless. How long do you have after taking PEDs before your natural show? Someone interpret what that even means.
Just say yeah and move on to the next.
Yes. Mm-hmm. True. No, false. No, none of the above. I think maybe he means how long do you have after taking PEDs before you can do a natural show?
Potentially that, or just asking you how long you had in between.
Oh, well, I didn't do a natural show, so
For your
never.
but
Naturals and quotes.
I didn't do a natural show.
how long was it?
Look at him trying to piece his way through this.
Yeah, I can't. All right, here we go. How much time was in between your last cycle or TRT dose, I guess, until your natural show or your show
You
competed
guys
at?
are treating this guy like he's a dumbass, but it's probably like his fifth language. He's like hella fucking smart, and he's just like
He's
still.
got like 9 PhDs in astrophysics in his country. In my country, you are all stupid. All right, so if it's Cam's version of the question being how long did you have after your last cycle before you competed drug-free? And it was a little over 2 years. So I competed December 14th, I think, and I made the decision to completely go off of everything 25 months, like so that November, 2 years and a month before that was when I pretty much just stopped everything completely cold turkey. So it was a little over 2 years.
What felt worse, coming out of your diet and having completely suppressed testosterone, or coming completely off?
Man, that's a good question.
Similar.
So when I came off of everything, I honestly didn't really notice that much in terms of side effects. Everyone is like, "Oh, how brutal was it?" Like I didn't really notice that much. Like, yeah, I had the lethargy, the lack of sex drive, but because my body fat levels were a little higher at the time, I think that I had kind of a little bit of a buffer there. So I would say coming out of the diet with the low body fat levels was a lot worse. Coming out of a diet just feels horrible. Natural, enhanced, all the above.
Yep. And then I guess the other side of the question is, if somebody's wanting to compete in natural federation and they've used drugs before, I believe based off of like the INBF, WNBF, it's 7 years for most of like your big boy compounds, which is what you're supposed to do. But yeah, I don't know about the other federations, but I know in that one, I believe it's 7 years.
Paul, do you know why it's 7 years?
Yeah, man. I want to say it's based off that one study where they actually took rodents and gave them testosterone, I believe, and then they removed the testosterone, gave them a detraining period, if I remember correctly, and then trained them again to see how much muscle they would regain. And they saw that some of those benefits from the steroids lasted, I can't remember exactly how many days it was, but it translated to about 10% of their lifetime. And so now people use that study and say like, okay, average lifetime human, maybe 7 years. That's how long it takes, you know? So it's a lot of loose extrapolation just to kind of hopefully be sure and try to make sure somebody doesn't have an unfair advantage. I'm sure we'll get into that more in like the next question.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so it's 7 years before you can compete. All right, so the next question is from Mark Charette. Mark Charette is one of my clients. He's actually prepping. He competed 6 years ago in this show, and now he's doing it again, a 6-year reunion with this show at the Tampa Classic. He's going to crush it. Any difference in hunger levels or difference in recovery time? Difference in recovery time, absolutely. I recovered significantly faster when I was using than when I was off, and that's a lot of people think recovery time, they think soreness, like, oh, you're never sore. It wasn't so much about soreness levels, it was about my ability to repeat levels of effort in the gym. So when I was enhanced, I could have a very, very hard squat session, and then a couple days later, and I could go in and I could repeat my effort, or I could actually exceed my level of effort from that previous session. Whereas when I was on the natural side of things, there was a little bit more of a delay period in terms of recovery. Maybe if I had a really hard squat session, I needed 4, 5, 6, depending on the calorie deficit, days to be able to actually repeat that level of effort. So definitely a difference in recovery time. Hunger levels, not so much. But Paul, you were talking about some compounds that have effects on hunger levels.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point when your body fat gets low enough, nothing is probably going to be that beneficial. But yeah, you know, there are some anabolic compounds, usually orals, that tend to sort of disturb hunger and reduce hunger a little bit, which can be problematic, obviously, when you're in a gaining phase and trying to shove food in. So,
not to mention other things like insulin increasing hunger when being enhanced.
Yeah. So you definitely got some compounds. EQ comes to mind, and then some of your peptides like your GHRPs that will increase your hunger levels. And then, so in terms of the orals that reduce hunger, are they actually reducing like hunger hormone levels, or is it more of like my indigestion is so bad that if I eat anything, I'm gonna kill myself?
I think a lot of it relates to just feeling bloated, full, potentially the indigestion and stuff like that. So, a lot of people will claim that, if they take a certain milligrammage of Anadrol, that they'll feel nauseous and not really want to eat as much, or struggle to eat things that aren't just like hyper palatable, like pizza.
Yeah. So in terms of difference in hunger levels between the preps, equally hungry, very hungry. Would eat cardboard out of 10. Next question from Johnny Irons, which is a great porn name.
Oh my god.
I don't know if I've ever told Johnny that, but great porn name. Doesn't even have to have like a stage name. He was just born for porn.
Johnny Nine Iron. What's the nine stand for, though?
Oh my goodness. Get this boy signed. Get him a contract. OnlyFans. If anyone from OnlyFans is watching, I got someone for you.
Speak your own porn.
But Johnny asks, and this is the question that we really wanted to get to here, was how long do you speculate you will still reap the benefits from prior enhancement? So that rodent research would indicate 7 years. But what do you guys think on this?
So, I think there might be some human stuff too. I can't remember what the duration like away from anabolic steroids were. But so I think a lot of that does come from the rodent research, the assumptions there, because we see that some of these adaptations like myonuclei, so little sites of like protein and gene expression within the muscle, these elevate and they stay, for a while. In humans, we don't really know how long though, and some people might speculate 7 years. Some people say maybe potentially a lifetime. But just because that may be true, we don't really know in terms of like how much quantifiable advantage does that provide, And so how I like to think about it is like, you have this factory, right? And right now you have a certain amount of machines in that factory. And like, let's say you have 50 dudes and we're making a product, right? And so we build this factory bigger. We add more machines and we hire more people. And these people are the steroids. And so we're pumping out more product. But, so we hire 50 more people. So we started with 50, we went up to 100. But now we have to lay off a shit ton of people. Now maybe we're worse than we started. We have low testosterone. So now we only have 20 workers, right? But the how much more product can we pump out without all those workers? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think most of the benefits that are potential benefits that are going to be noticed are going to be during an off season or in a surplus. If you have any chance in, those myonuclei, the muscle memory, to have any sort of bounce back, you're going to need food to be able to, get that response out of it. And, I just don't see a whole lot, especially in those last 6 to 8 weeks of that even holding.
Honestly, even there and then off season, what I would imagine is just a slower detraining period. Like you're still probably losing muscle, but just over a longer duration versus like in a diet, I would say, I think just sort of like, the outside looking in, sort of seeing Ryan's prep, we don't know how much of an advantage he had, but considering that he was going into the prep hypogonadal, finished hypogonadal, and then we see the final product of, basically Ryan was a little bitch. That advantage just was probably fairly negligible,
Yeah, I feel like most of the benefits that you would see too might be from pound to pound strength rather than actual size, because those compounds are going to be retaining electrolytes, carbohydrates, fluids, and simply just coming off elevated super physiological dose is going to take away that fullness off of that.
I think the biggest thing that I kind of weighed throughout the entire prep was like when really fighting the ethical battle of like wanting to compete natural or not. I never had the intention to do a natural show to compete. I'll never, just full disclosure, I'll never compete in a natural show. I will never ever take a first place trophy or a pro card away from someone who's been a lifetime natural. That's not something that I ever plan on doing, even after the 7 years. But the question that I struggled with was, is it a bigger advantage that I once took steroids, or is it a bigger disadvantage that going into this prep, I'm more hypogonadal than anyone who even competes naturally? So that was something that I kind of just wasn't able to quantify. How would it even be possible to quantify the advantage that still exists compared to the disadvantage that now exists because of the current situation?
Really hard.
When you get down that low in body fat and food's taken away, I think there's a potential that the end result is going to be very relatively similar in terms of your testosterone levels, but maybe the bounce back is going to be what differentiates those.
Yeah, so I mean, we can like propose all sorts of things, but I think one of the biggest things we have to remember is that these anabolic compounds, they sort of start that signaling cascade for an anabolic response, you know? And so when you completely remove that out of the picture, and then, you know, you take X amount of years off, even if those myonuclei are there, where the real advantage is probably is if Ryan were to go back on these compounds, that sort of muscle memory would probably be a lot more enhanced.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's on.
Yeah.
I think I did everything in my power to give myself the least possible advantage. Switch sports, stop taking drugs, eat like an asshole, be small and weak, and then kind of just pick the stuff back up. So, Johnny, to answer your question, how long do you speculate I'll still reap the benefits from prior enhancement? I have absolutely no idea. I have no idea. I'm not even I'm not convinced that throughout this diet that I was even reaping the benefits. And it's 100% speculation from us three to say whether I was or not. Some people will say, oh, you know, you don't deserve to compete in any tested endeavor for the rest of your life. And some people say, listen, it stops when you take the drugs, or it stops when you stop taking the drugs. That's when your disadvantage goes away. But I think it was like Alex Rodriguez was like the first time that I heard about this, when he started getting in trouble for steroids, and then people started bringing up the argument of like, oh, he should never be able to play baseball again. That was one of the first times that I had heard that example. Anything else on that one, gentlemen, for the good of the order?
No, man.
Last one. I think we got one more from Matt Eisenman. Another of my clients. Did you have to be more mindful of the magnitude of caloric deficit used when natural versus enhanced? Could you get away with a more aggressive deficit when enhanced? Man, this is a doozy of a question. So the first part, do you have to be more mindful of the magnitude of a caloric deficit when natural versus enhanced? What do you guys think? I'll let you guys open up on this one.
Given that I think both sides of the spectrum need to be thought out and planned carefully, so that you're losing at a rate of body fat that you're not going to start digging into a deficit so deep that's going to hinder performance and result your muscle mass, or how much you may retain. But I think if you had a natural guy who had to push, 3% total body loss per week, and then you've got an enhanced guy, I think you can kind of obviously you're going to get away more with the enhanced guy. If you got to push it, you can, and kind of hope for the best that you're not going to lose as much muscle. But I think if you're a natural athlete or a coach that's coaching natural athletes, you got to be really careful, plan out extra time, and make sure that you're losing at a rate where performance isn't taking such a huge hit, because it's going to add up over time. And I don't think people really realize that is when they start losing so fast during a contest prep, they don't see it at first, but weeks and weeks of it, it really will start showing towards the end of things.
Well, what I might add to that is just the perspective of, a lot of times, and we sort of mentioned this before, is that, depending on what compounds are used when they're coming in and out, and just the particular individual, maybe they are gaining muscle early in that prep while food is higher, or compounds are being added or removed that increase or decrease like water retention, basically. A lot of people might not see the scale weight change, and just keep pushing calories lower and lower and adding more and more cardio while not really paying attention much to like the visual effect. Or maybe you have an athlete that just doesn't want to send check-in photos as frequently as you'd like. And so then like a lot of people just sort of run into issues there. So that's something to kind of consider too, is just like the level of patience and, being able to make a change and just kind of sit on it and see what happens,
Yeah. I think that.
So in that aspect, you might need to be more careful, in terms of calorie reductions.
I think the question in and of itself kind of comes from a strange place, because the root of the question is really, can I get away with pushing a more aggressive deficit when I'm enhanced? And the answer to the question is, yeah, you can get away with it, but with an appropriately planned prep, you shouldn't have to get away with it. You won't have to get away with anything, because the plan is going to work the way it should, and you're going to end up where you need to be at the right time, whether you're enhanced or whether you're natural. But should someone who is natural be more mindful of the magnitude of their calorie deficit? I think that they probably should. Just from a muscle retention standpoint, the enhanced individual has a bit more of a fail-safe. You've got when the food gets low, you've got a little bit more of an impetus to hold on to some of that muscle when you've got something that's going to increase the quality of your training and like Paul said, set off that signaling cascade.
Also, I think, with an enhanced individual, let's say you do reach a point where you don't want to pull any more food or cardio. I think you have more tricks in your bag, kind of.
Yeah, you can manipulate those volumizing and aromatizable, especially orals like D-ball. You could even manipulate your deficit. You've got somebody that is going to put on like, 2 to 4 pounds of water just from taking that compound. It might be very little and might not be a whole lot, but essentially you're putting that deficit to be larger just because they're weighing more. And you put that weight on too, you're gonna have more leverage under the bar. Performance is gonna go up. Potentially joints may feel better. So overall performance may keep up to a point where if someone's newer to these compounds, there's a chance that they could grow. But there's definitely a higher chance of muscle retention when performance is maintained. So there's a way that you could kind of manipulate it with compounds. I don't know how much of a difference you're really going to get out of it, but it is a manipulation of making a deficit steeper without digging food.
And then even just talking about some of those stimulants and such and other compounds that can help with fat burning too.
Yeah, it's definitely an advantage there. All right, that is the final of our questions. I think we've been going for a little bit over an hour here. So this has been a longer one. So what I will say is, if you guys do have any additional comments for us, if you found this interesting, this piqued your interest, maybe you thought of something else, you can always drop a comment below with your questions. If we do get enough questions, we may do a little bit of an IG live or maybe like an IGTV, a shorter version of this, just to kind of wrap up some more questions. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching. As always, subscribe, like, comment. I don't even know. I said this on my last video that I recorded. I was like, I don't even know what to say at the end of a video. I just like watch other YouTube people and I just repeat what they say. Just make shit up. You go sign up on the website. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of programs on there, and they'll work, and they'll get you swole and strong, and it'll tell you what macros to eat, and it'll even give you a meal plan feature on there as well. That's only $30 a month. You get 2 weeks free. Also, on the website, if you click coaches, you can see Cam's beautiful face. You can even sign up for coaching with Cam on there. Paul's on there as well. I'm on there as well, I guess. And then we got some other people on there, some powerlifting coaches, some CrossFit coaches, weightlifting. If you got some little pains, little injuries, work with one of our doctors of physical therapy that we have on staff. Go hit us up on Instagram. DM us your, I don't know, pictures, half-naked pictures, whatever you got for us. Send them our way.
If you have any ideas too, feel free to shoot them our way. Ryan's not going to bite you for making suggestions.
Yeah, as long as it's a good suggestion, I won't fuck you up. And let's not forget that I am just a small natty boy now, so I'm not strong. I can't even beat anybody up anymore.
Lick him and he'll cry.
Yeah, for real. All right, but thanks for watching. We will see you on the next one. Stay gifted.